Hello, Virgo. There are seasons in a person's life that feel different from all the others. Not because the external circumstances are necessarily louder or more dramatic, but because something internal has shifted into a kind of alignment that makes everything, even the ordinary. Even the quiet Tuesday mornings feel charged with a meaning that is difficult to name but impossible to ignore. Like the air itself has changed. Like something that was previously just out of reach has moved, almost imperceptibly, closer. And some of you are standing inside exactly that kind of season right now. Something is cresting. Something is arriving at a high point that has been a long time in the making. And the most important thing you could do in this moment is allow yourself to feel the full weight of it rather than moving past it too quickly. If this found you today, I think some part of you already knows that something is different. Something is more possible than it was before. A theme appearing strongly in this reflection is the energy of culmination, the sense that a long arc of growth, of internal work, of becoming is reaching one of its most luminous points. And what's worth understanding about culmination is that it rarely feels the way the mind imagines it will. It doesn't always arrive with fanfare or with a clear external marker that announces, this is it, this is the moment everything changed. More often, it arrives as a quality of presence, a groundedness that wasn't previously there, a confidence in your own value and direction that used to feel aspirational and now, quietly and almost without ceremony, simply feels true. That shift from aspiring to being is one of the most significant things a person can experience. And some of you are living inside it right now, even if the full magnitude of it hasn't yet fully registered. An energy that may be present for many of you is the particular brightness that tends to accompany a period when a person has genuinely come into themselves. When the long process of shedding what was never truly yours, the expectations, the fears, the versions of yourself you performed for the comfort of others, reaches a point where what remains is something essentially unapologetically real. There is a lightness to that, a kind of joy that doesn't depend on circumstances being perfect, because it doesn't come from circumstances at all. It comes from the inside, from having arrived finally at a version of yourself that you don't need to manage or maintain or explain. That just simply is. And an energy appearing here is the suggestion that many of you are closer to that arrival point than you have ever been before. A pattern that sometimes emerges at this kind of threshold is that the outer world begins to respond differently to someone who has undergone this kind of inner shift. Not because the world has changed, but because the person moving through it is different. The quality of their presence is different. The way they occupy a room, carry themselves through an interaction, meet the eyes of a stranger, all of it subtly altered by the internal reorganization that has taken place. And other people feel that even when they can't name it, they are drawn to it. They orient toward it the way living things orient toward warmth and light without necessarily understanding why. And this is worth sitting with for a moment, because one of the most quietly profound things about genuine inner growth is that it changes not just how you experience your own life, but how your life experiences you. What arrives, what stays, what finds you and recognizes you and chooses to remain. The version of yourself that has been emerging through the work of recent experience is not just more whole in the private sense, it is more magnetic in the outward sense, more capable of drawing toward it the kinds of people, the kinds of moments, the kinds of connections that resonate at the same frequency of honesty and depth. That alignment between who you are becoming and what is beginning to find you is one of the most genuinely exciting things that can happen in a person's life. And an energy present here suggests that some of you are inside exactly that alignment right now. This reflection invites you to consider what has genuinely shifted in you over recent months, not what you've been telling yourself has changed, but what you can feel in the most honest, unperformed part of your experience is actually different now about who you are and how you move through the world. Here's the thing about the kind of connection that arrives when a person is genuinely in their own light. It tends to be a different quality of connection than what arrives when we are still performing, still seeking, still arriving at interactions from a place of need or incompleteness. When two people meet or reconnect or suddenly see each other clearly for what may feel like the first time in a moment when both are operating from something close to their truest selves, what becomes possible between them is qualitatively different. It has a different texture, a different depth, something that doesn't require management or strategy because it is built on recognition rather than projection, on seeing and being seen rather than on the careful construction of an impression. And a theme appearing here is that this kind of recognition, deep, almost startling, the kind that makes a person feel simultaneously completely exposed and completely safe, may be approaching for some of you. Not as a fantasy, not as a wish being granted from the outside, but as the natural arrival of something that becomes possible when a person has done enough of their own interior work to actually be present for it, to not sabotage it, to let it be what it is, rather than what fear insists it might secretly be. This reflection invites you to consider whether you are currently as open to receiving a genuine, deep connection as you believe yourself to be, and whether there are any remaining walls or protective patterns that might cause you to deflect or diminish something real if it arrived in a form you weren't quite expecting. An energy that may be present in this moment is one of magnetic alignment. The sense that what you have been becoming through all the work, the growth, the quiet transformations of recent experience has been making you more fully yourself. And in becoming more fully yourself, you have been becoming more fully findable, more available, more recognizable to the kind of connection that operates on the frequency of genuine resonance rather than surface compatibility. There is something quietly extraordinary about that process. It means that the inner work was never separate from the outer life. It was always shaping it, always preparing the conditions for what becomes possible next. Um, some of the most profound connections between people arrive not when someone is actively searching, but when they have become still enough, grounded enough, present enough in their own life that they can actually feel when something real is near. When the noise of seeking has quieted sufficiently for the signal of genuine recognition to be heard. And a pattern worth noticing here is that the energy present in this reflection has exactly that quality of stillness, not stagnation, not the stillness of someone who has given up, but the luminous, receptive stillness of someone who has arrived somewhere true in themselves and is perhaps for the first time in a while genuinely available for what the moment might bring. And here is something quietly remarkable about that kind of availability. It doesn't look like openness always looks in the popular imagination, arms wide open, heart fully exposed, every defense dissolved. It's subtler than that. It looks like a person who is fully engaged in their own life, genuinely interested in their own becoming, not orbiting around the absence of something or someone. And paradoxically, it is precisely that self possession, that quality of someone who is complete in themselves, that creates the most powerful conditions for genuine connection. Because a person who is whole attracts differently than a person who is seeking completion. They attract not from the wound, but from the wholeness. And what arrives in response to wholeness tends to be of a completely different quality. A theme worth sitting with here is the difference between the kind of connection that asks you to be less than you are and the kind that asks you to be more. The kind that requires you to manage yourself, your feelings, your needs, your full dimensionality in order to be acceptable, versus the kind that expands in direct proportion to how real you are willing to be. Some of you have spent significant time in the first kind, learning through experience exactly what it costs, exactly what it requires you to leave at the door. And some of you are now, for perhaps the first time, with genuine conviction, unwilling to pay that particular cost anymore. Unwilling to be smaller than you are in order to make a connection possible. And that unwillingness, that quiet, non negotiable insistence on being fully yourself, is not an obstacle to connection. It is, paradoxically, the most powerful invitation to the right kind of it. This reflection invites you to consider what it would feel like to be in a connection where your full self, including the parts you've previously felt compelled to conceal or soften, was not just tolerated, but genuinely welcomed. And whether you can allow yourself to believe that this is actually possible for you. And this is where it gets both tender and luminous. Because there is a particular quality of joy that becomes available to a person who has genuinely stopped looking for their value in the reflection of another person's desire, who has arrived at a place where their sense of self is stable enough that a connection becomes something they can receive with openness rather than something they need for survival. That quality of joy is not the frantic, searching, please choose me kind of joy. It's the warm, grounded, I know who I am and I'm curious about you kind. And that distinction changes everything. It changes the nature of the connections that become available. It changes the quality of presence that gets brought to them. It changes ultimately what is possible. And energy appearing here is the suggestion that some of you are approaching or have recently arrived at exactly that kind of joyful stability. And from that stability, from that genuinely rooted, genuinely present, genuinely whole version of yourself, a connection of real depth and resonance becomes not just possible, but almost natural. Because wholeness tends to attract wholeness. And the work you have done on yourself quietly, persistently, without always knowing where it was leading, has been making you into someone who is ready not just to find that kind of connection, but to actually keep it, to be in it fully, to let it be as real and as deep as it is capable of being. This reflection invites you to consider what you are now able to offer in a relationship that you were not yet able to offer in previous chapters, and whether you have been giving yourself adequate credit for the growth that has made that difference possible. There's also something worth naming about what it means to be genuinely ready for a deep connection. Because readiness in this context doesn't mean having no more growing to do, doesn't mean being finished or perfected or fully resolved in every dimension of your inner life. It means being sufficiently rooted in yourself that you can be in the presence of something significant without losing your footing, that you can let someone in without dissolving into them, that you can be moved, genuinely, deeply moved, without being destabilized, that you can love with openness and generosity and full presence while still remaining at the center of it all, completely and recognizably yourself. That is readiness. And a pattern appearing here suggests that many of you have been building exactly that kind of rootedness, whether you've been naming it that or not. This reflection invites you to consider what it would look like to enter a deep connection from this more grounded version of yourself, how differently you might show up, what you might allow, what you might no longer feel compelled to protect yourself from, and whether you can feel, even now, how different that version of love might be. The closing energy of this reflection is one of the warmest and most genuinely hopeful I've felt in a long time. There's a brightness to it, a sense of a person standing in their own light, not borrowed light, not reflected light, but the particular luminosity that belongs to someone who has done the real work of becoming themselves and is now finally fully arriving in their own life. That arrival has a quality that is almost irresistible to the right kind of attention, not because it is performing, precisely because it isn't. And the connection that may be moving towards some of you, this deep, sweeping, genuinely transformative kind of resonance, doesn't require you to do anything other than continue being exactly who you have been becoming. Continue showing up honestly. Continue being present in your own life. Continue trusting the instincts that have been sharpening as you've grown. The recognition, when it arrives, will not require management or engineering. It will feel in the way that truly right things tend to feel, like something that was always meant to find you, not because fate arranged it from the outside, but because you arranged it from the inside through every honest choice, every act of growth, every moment of refusing to be less than you actually are. And perhaps the most beautiful thing about standing at this particular threshold is that the joy available here isn't contingent. It isn't waiting on the arrival of another person to become real. It is already present, already yours, already fully alive in the version of yourself that has been quietly, persistently, remarkably emerging through everything you have lived and everything you have chosen and everything you have been willing to become. The connection that may be approaching is not the source of that joy. It is a reflection of it, a recognition of it, a natural gathering of what your own becoming has been making possible all along. You are right now at one of the more remarkable moments of your own becoming. Let yourself feel that. Let yourself be genuinely, unapologetically proud of that. And let yourself be open warmly, completely, without armor to what this luminous version of yourself is beginning to draw into your life. It may arrive more beautifully, more unexpectedly, more completely than you have allowed yourself to imagine. And you deserve fully and without qualification every last luminous moment of it.